My name is Nick Housby, and I'm going to talk to you about Accunea and what we are trying to do in terms of monitoring kidney function. This slide really explains some of the facts around kidney transplants. And what you see is that the number of transplants are 3,448, and 268 of those are discarded, whilst 221 die on the waiting list. So the real problem is the dynamics between how many organs are in the organ bank compared to how many people require an organ. And in the US and in the UK, there's an issue about discard rates. So if you can reduce the number of discard rates, you will increase the amount of transplants that you can perform, and therefore the patients would be off dialysis, which is a major cause of further increasing illness. The cost of savings for the NHS, because the NHS spends around £1 billion a year on treating people who have had acute kidney injury or renal failure. And for example, £25,800 saving each year for each transplant versus dialysis. So what you would normally do in an instance where a patient is suspected of having renal injury is do a creatinine blood test. So creatinine is the gold standard that the NHS uses and has done for quite some time. And creatinine levels, therefore, are really important. And it's also really important to make sure that you catch a rising creatinine test early as possible. However, in the current systems is a 4-hour wait for a blood test to come back from the laboratory following a needle stick blood test. So one, the patient's had blood taken out of them, and two, it's taken 4 hours to get the result. And the time the result gets back, the creatinine, the amount of creatinine detected is probably a lot higher than was anticipated from the result. So getting in there early is the most important thing. How can you get in there early? Well, if you use instantaneous measurement, i.e. doing it in continuous real time, which is what Accunea can do, then you can get instant levels. So you know what the baseline level is, and then you can follow it as the creatinine increases at such a sensitivity far lower than current blood tests. So the market size for transplantation is huge. And they're estimated at 51 billion market size by 2025, and an increase in the numbers in terms of CAGR of 9.8%. The reason this is all going upwards is because people are living longer. More chronic diseases are being found. Diseases from obesity, say diabetes, etc., actually increases the number of failures. So the market increases. The numbers of organs, however, stays about the same. So you're getting a completely disparate measurement between the two. So our co-founder invented this technology. The technology is based on a sensor which can detect creatinine at really low amounts and in low volumes. And a collaborator is Professor Papelwa from Hammersmith Hospital, and he's one of the leading experts in the UK in kidney transplants. So what he wants, and what he says most clinicians want, and we've talked to a few more, and we've talked to a few other key opinion leaders, and yes, they do want a pre-op organ assessment. Why do you want that? Well, because currently there is no pre-op organ assessment that actually gives you any quantifiable data. And what you want to identify from the organ is the filtration rate. That will determine how well that organ is functioning. So if you're presented with three kidneys for the surgeon to choose, which one does he choose? There's no test, so it's really a bit of guesswork, and that's just not acceptable. So having talked with this professor, he says that this type of technology would revolutionize that area. So in pre-organ assessment, we'd be able to tell which one is functioning the best and therefore transplant that organ. Having transplanted, you could then follow the creatinine level post-operatively for about a week using continuous real-time measuring. So this gives you a really good comparison between how the organ was operating before and after transplant, and therefore you could see whether there was any issue early on in the transplant, which you do occasionally see, and therefore the instant rise in creatinine would take away the need for important re-surgery so that you can go back and correct something that may have gone wrong due to creatinine increases. So what I'm saying on this unmet medical need is that kidney centres in the UK, so numbers of where organs are transplanted, in what centres are there? 24 centres in the UK, up to 828 in the US. But also there are other organs, so liver, heart, lung, pancreas, and we can use our technology for each of those. So what we're doing is to look at how well a transplant, the organ when transplanted, would be over a 10-year time period, for example. And a lot of publications to suggest that if you get this right, then they're absolutely fine to transplant. This may not be consistent with some of the current criteria for discards. So the solution that we're providing is because of the increasing numbers of patients. The numbers of publications are also increasing. So as people realise that the criteria used in the health systems in America and the UK need attention. So if we can provide a technology like this, we can reduce the costs for the healthcare service in terms of increased bed stays. The number of time points that we get from the real-time analysis will actually give you a trend analysis, which you can predict where clinical interventions could be done where they haven't been done before, because of the data that we get across the hundreds of transplants that happen each year. But that's an ongoing thing that will develop in the future. So we will provide live results at the bedside, and they will be easy to interpret. A nurse can interpret them. Equally, if the creatinine level is going up, then an alert will go to the clinician. So the senior clinician would then have on their phone an alert would come up, and they will be able to suggest ways to intervene. Okay, so it's a front-loaded expandable cartridge at the front, so what we can provide then is each day you would change the consumables. So the consumable package could be changed, and the whole system will be sustainable for at least a week. Yes, there are competitors. There are others on the top left-hand side, are competitors of point-of-care analysis that use a single blood test. This single blood test is read at the patient's bedside, but it requires a team of specialists to be able to interpret it. On the right-hand side at the top we sit there, which is continuous real-time. We don't have anything injected, because MediBeacon at the bottom actually inject a dye label that into the body, and they measure the decrease in that, which suggests what the GFR, the filtration rate is. What you actually find is when NICE have done some investigations in terms of these point-of-care ones that are single point, and find that there is a small discrepancy sometimes, and that they undervalue the level of creatinine, which you don't really want to do. So what we propose is that we could work with NICE and with the regulators to ensure that we can be a reference point for those other tests in the future. So we're going to make some money by visiting the units that do transplantation, whether it be kidney, liver or other, and supply a product, for example the RenoSure unit, at about £25,000. £25,000 is about the lower end of what the other machines would cost for point of care, but you get 7 days continuous real-time data. So the business model then. So we would be selling these units, which are about £25,000 each, and we would sell consumables at £350 per day for the week's monitoring post-transplant. So the management team is made up of myself. I've run several startup companies, taken them through to fundraising and through to clinical trials in some cases. Rob Leary Leonie is the inventor of the technology, and he's obviously the co-founder. But he's a medic and also did a PhD in bioengineering at Imperial with Professor Martin Boutel, who's a world expert in this type of analysis using sensors. And Professor Tam is a consultant within Imperial College, and he's one of the experts that we also use in terms of designing proof of concept work. So what have we done to date is to have some funding from Innovate UK for £100,000. We've had some small investment from Invitech, which is an SEIS fund. The founders have learned the company quite a bit and a business loan, and that work is now just about to finish in the next 3 months. So it's seeking £500,000 in order to manufacture and develop our product. And that will be through the Centre for Process Innovation, Micronet AB, which is a Netherlands-based company for microfluidics. And that will take about 12 months to do. Following that, we are developing our route to market for CE marking, first-in-man clinical trial, and sales. We're estimating a low end of 2 million, but maybe more. Thank you. That just gives you a summary of that across the timeline we've just been talking about.